It's been a busy last couple of weeks in the automotive news space. Last week, we reported General Motors and their over $1 billion tariff hit, then Stellantis, who's set to lose $1.4 billion this year from tariffs, Tesla, who saw the second straight quarter of declines. Well, now it's Ford's turn. But before we dive into that, I'm excited to announce that today, the 3.0 version of my course, the Car Sharing Masterclass, is released. Not only that, but we have some really cool features that are going to be rolling out throughout the entire month of August. And so if you're someone who has been curious about the world of starting a rental car company or a Turo and car sharing fleet, I can guarantee you that there is no better educational product on the market than the Car Sharing Masterclass and our online community. You can use the code OFFER99 to get $99 off. The link is down in the description below. Earlier this week, Ford reported their Q2 earnings, and while Ford did beat analyst expectations in both the categories of earnings per share and automotive revenue, in fact, Ford showed total revenue of $50 billion, which was an increase of 5% year over year. However, while revenue increased from the $47.81 billion from last year, not all is sunshine and roses for Ford. Because while the company reported $50.2 billion in revenue, they also showed a net loss of $36 million, which is significantly worse than not only last year, but also last quarter. And according to Ford's own earnings report, this $36 million in losses is primarily due to special charges, which include a number of different costs that Ford had to eat. And according to Ford, one of which is field service action and expenses related to a previously announced cancellation of an electric vehicle program. Now that is Ford's phrasing, not mine, and I felt as though their wording was a bit vague and truthfully a little bit weird. But what I assume Ford is referring to is the Ford E program, which was a dealership program that died around this time last year. The program was outlined by Ford in 2022 at the height of the EV craze. And essentially what the program was a way to get dealerships into the business of selling EVs. But the program required an extremely high investment, in some cases upwards of $1 million. And so as you can expect, dealerships were less than enthused with this program. And in June of 2024, the program was discontinued because of massive pushback from dealerships. But EV demand no doubt also played a role here because of the fact that electric vehicle demand just really hasn't been meeting expectations. And so why would a dealership invest $1 million into being able to sell an EV whenever, all things considered, EVs aren't selling as well as people may have thought? And the cancellation of this program has resulted in losses from Ford. But that isn't the only problem that Ford is navigating. Another major problem is tariffs. Part of these special charges I mentioned a moment ago was tariff-related costs, which Ford has said that in Q2 they got hit with $800 million in tariff-related expenses, and they expect for costs to rise to $2 billion by the end of the year, which is about 25% more than what Ford had initially expected. Now, I think that Ford, almost more than any other automaker, is an excellent example of the complexities and impact of tariffs to U.S. automakers and U.S. companies in general. Because according to Ford, about 80% of all of their vehicles are assembled here in the United States. So to maybe somebody who doesn't know better, they may think that this means that 80% of Ford's vehicles are shielded from tariff costs. However, this is absolutely not the case, and in large part, this is because car parts are also tariffed. And many of the car parts that automakers use, Ford included, are imported into the United States from other countries. And as a result, even though Ford assembles the bulk of their vehicles here in the United States, they are still seeing a significant tariff impact. Because again, while the bulk of Ford vehicles are assembled in the United States, when you look at the breakdown of the percentage of Ford components that actually come from the US or Canada, which in this case also has tariffs applied to them, you can see these figures here highlighted in the yellow square. The percentage is quite a bit less than 50%, which means that in the case of Ford, all of their vehicles are subject to tariffs in some way, shape, or form. And because Ford, like many other companies out there, aren't raising their prices across the board, this means that this is a cost and expense that Ford is having to eat directly, and it is absolutely reflective in their earnings. But that isn't all, and there are more factors that have contributed to this $36 million loss. And that's the fact that Ford is absolutely plagued with warranty and recall issues. Ford has been fighting an uphill battle with warranty and recall costs for quite a while now. In fact, this time last year, the talking point was going semi-viral that Ford was losing $24.5 million per day on recalls. And this is still an absolutely massive problem for the company. Just this month, Ford recalled 687,000 vehicles due to engine fires, which will cost the company $570 million. And that is just one single recall, and Ford has year after year been one of the highest recall automakers in the entire automotive industry. This is costing the company billions of dollars per year. Even in writing this video, I tried to find a clear-cut number of how much Ford is actually spending on recalls and warranty costs each and every quarter, and I couldn't find a clear indicator for what they spent in Q2. So to me, it is extremely obvious that Ford is keeping that number a bit hush-hush, and the fact that they used the classification of specialty charges was absolutely a choice. Now, Ford has their business divided into three different segments. Ford Blue, which is your standard Ford, think Mustangs, trucks, etc. Ford Model E, which is their electric vehicle segment, and Ford Pro, which is their commercial segment. And Ford Pro really carried the team in Q2, which generated $2.3 billion in profit. But Ford Blue, its gasoline vehicle business, made $661 million in the quarter, which was down 43% year over year, and losses from the Model E electric vehicle business rose 16% to $1.3 billion. So Ford is still, at least as of making this video, absolutely losing a ton of money from their electric vehicles, and they're losing money on each electric vehicle that they sell. However, I suppose the silver lining here for Ford is a comment that Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, made in relation to deregulation being a benefit to the company, with Farley stating, and I quote, "I would say the emissions tailwind is pretty substantial. Look at the mix of our products with Pro and Blue. To be able to build what customers really want is going to be a financial tailwind for us." Which to me is almost a foreshadowing statement from Jim Farley that Ford is going to begin to lean more and more into gas vehicles, which leaves me curious what the future of Ford Model E really looks like. But like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.